Simon started as a lawyer in 1999, working with Clayton Youths in Sydney. He has also become a migration agent in the last 7 years and is also on the board of directors of the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Thailand. Simon also works at Australian Visas Thailand, where he has helped hundreds of clients achieve their visa goals. On behalf of Bart Smart, I would like to welcome Simon to kick off the webinar. Hi, Simon.
Hello, Harris, and thank you very much. And a big thank you to Bart Smart as well for putting this on. Obviously, it's great to be able to give people some very accurate and up-to-date information, which is causing a lot of people stress at this time. So thanks, Harris.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got with me the lovely Nit, and Nit. Nit will be answering all questions in Thai later on if anybody asks any questions in Thai. And obviously, for those that have joined us from the Philippines, we will unfortunately only be able to do that in English. But anyway, so hopefully everybody can see us and hear us, and we'll get started.
Okay, great. I'll let you get to it.
Perfect. All right. So where are we at? One of the first things I really want to get across to everybody is the importance of actually dealing in facts. There's a lot of things happening at the moment and people aren't really sure what's going on. And there's a lot of people making comments and things. You see it in the Facebook groups and everything else. Only deal in fact, because a lot of the stuff, I see a lot of the things that get posted in the groups, and it's actually really concerning because a lot of the information is not correct. And if people base what they're doing around that information, it can have disastrous consequences. So that's the first one. The next thing is talk about budget update and the best insights. We had the budget a couple of weeks ago now, and that really has given us, I guess, an understanding of what the government in Australia is planning and doing at the moment. And you may have all now heard of the term Fortress Australia. Pretty much they have decided they're going to close off the borders, keep the place shut up, and they're going to make it incredibly difficult to get in and out of Australia. The plan is to obviously vaccinate everybody, and once they've done that, then they will start to ease the restrictions. So it's something that, unfortunately, there is no short-term fix that we're going to see, and it's certainly in relation to immigration and what's going to happen. The vaccination rollout has stalled. It's been slow to start. It's gaining momentum, but already we've seen with the outbreak in Victoria recently that there are hiccups and everything. Until that's all fixed and solved, then there's going to be some long-term delays in everything that happens. One of the things that we have seen is that the government is quite willing to stop immigration, to stop travel, and they understand that there's actually going to be negative immigration over this financial year and the next financial year. I think that's forecast at over 220,000 people. So it's something they've made the policy, they've spent all their money, they've really geared up on the basis that they've got to keep very strict control over their borders. So that's kind of where we're at the moment as a snapshot. I'm going to break down, I'm going to break down stuff that was in the budget, what that impact is, and then I'm going to talk about some specific visas and the issues relating to them, or what the forecast is in visitor visas, work visas, student visas and family visas. And then we'll talk about how you can get exemptions to travel in or out of Australia and who can travel. And then we'll open up for Q&A at the end there. So the first thing is at the moment, the visa numbers for 2021-2022 tax year, Australia does their figures around the 1st of July to the 30th of June. They have said that they're going to keep the numbers the same. Okay, now that is a number of 160,000, but whereas in this financial tax year, these were specific targets, and they've been working very, very hard to process the visas, certainly in family area partner visas in particular. What they have said in the next financial year is that the numbers that they have released, which are the same as this year, are based on a ceiling as opposed to a target. And that's a very clever way of the government basically not committing to anything. They have left it so that they don't have to really grant any visas. So it's not a forecast or a target that they're going to hit, whereas this year was very much a target. They said, okay, we're going to achieve this and do this. I'll go into a bit of the specifics later, but the target of 160,000 is going to be split into skilled visas of 80,000, and I saw figures of family visas around 77,300. Now, why this is relevant? This is the number of partner visas they issued has increased significantly over this financial year, and the financial year compared to last year, it almost doubled for partner visas. They're going to maintain that for 2021, 2022. The one difference is that, as said, it's a ceiling, not a specific target that they're trying to reach, whereas I know that they very much were trying to reach it up until the 30th of June. And the other thing that's coming out of it is that with the whole process of what they're doing, they're focusing on onshore. So for people that are separated, that's a bit of a problem, although they have said that one of the goals is to try and reunite families. Of those family visas, we'll cover a bit more later, but a very, very large percentage of that is specifically focused on the partner visa. There's an allocation for parent visas as well. Now, there's a 4-year wait for welfare. One of the things that they've announced in the budget, they have been talking about this for a while. One of the things that they have announced is that the 4-year wait now will start on the 1st of January. And so if you aren't a permanent resident by that stage, you will have to wait for 4 years to access certain tax benefits, certain welfare payments, family payments and everything else. So that's going to be a concern for a lot of people because that's going to have a real financial impact on you. The other one that's of concern, and you've heard this, it's not as bad as maybe some of the media have said, but it will be an inconvenience certainly for some, is there is a new English test coming out. So to go from partner visas, to go from stage 1 to stage 2, and possibly there is going to be a new English language test. Now, part of what they've done is they have lifted the restrictions on the number of hours that you get as free learning. So you can now get unlimited free learning, and then you will have to do an English language test. Now, it's not as all doom and gloom as it sounds, because if people do not pass that test, but they have shown that they have actually attended the classes and everything else, there will apparently be provisions for that. Okay, so that's a very important thing to note. It's not a pass or fail. If you fail, you're out of the country. There will be some fallback for that. So just grab some water. So that's something that's obviously going to also impact people. If you do fail that test, then you will probably have to show that you've done 500 hours of English. I was speaking to somebody today who, when they do go back to Australia, they would probably go somewhere that is remote. And in the process of doing that, then they won't be able to easily access the English lessons. So it doesn't matter that the English lessons are available and free, it's going to cause significant difficulties in them to actually achieve that. So these are things that will be coming in, said that will come in later this year as well. So good to obviously try and get in and avoid those. So what are the visa options at the moment? There's a number of issues. Obviously, For a lot of you, you may be separated from partners and loved ones, or you may be looking for work in Australia and looking at how to get there and back and other things. So the most common of visas, obviously the visitor visa. These are primarily basically being put on hold. You can apply for a visitor visa, it will sit in the system. What happens is the visitor visa needs to be matched with a travel exemption request. And if the travel exemption gets passed, then they will then process the visitor visa. Otherwise, it will basically sit in limbo and it won't be processed. I'm seeing a few comments come in from people, so hello everybody. We will too, if you put your questions in the chat box, we will come to those later on at the end of this. So yeah, that's with visitor visas. They're very, very difficult, and if you don't meet the criteria, and I'm going to go through the exemptions later, if you don't meet those, then you will not have any chance of getting a visitor visa. Student visas, a lot of people have been asking about student visas. They have pretty much frozen student visas and they are not going to be processing any. There is talk of a small phased program at the which is going to happen at the end of this year. Again, it's going to be phased and it's going to be very specific. So if you're looking at trying to study in Australia, it's going to be a very long time before, we're talking a minimum of 6 months, before they're actually going to start letting any students in. And then, as I said, it's going to be a very controlled and phased way. We're looking at, realistically, for any kind of relaxation, we're looking probably at least the middle of 2022, towards the end of 2022, before they start actually rolling things out. And this is on the basis that they don't believe the vaccination process will be finished until at least the end of this year. The next one is work visas. Obviously, a lot of people would like to get into Australia and work now. The one thing that the Australian economy is doing is very, very good compared to a lot of the other countries around the world. So there is a lot of people hoping to get into Australia to take advantage of that. And there are a lot of employers in Australia that are crying out for work. There are a lot of areas where there are huge shortages at the moment. If you read the papers, if you see what's going on, BHP can't hit its iron ore export targets because it doesn't have enough truck drivers to drive the ore around. The hospitality industry is screaming out for people because they don't have the normal seasonal workers from backpackers and holiday makers and all the students that are across there. So they're screaming out for help. There's a shortage of chefs and cooks and other things. The Australian government has created there was a ministerial direction that went out, which was based on all about critical skills area. There are 19 jobs on that. Most of them are in the health services. So you're looking at doctors and nurses. And there is a area too that they're kind of looking at with this, like, critical business skills. But it's only 19 occupations at this stage. It is very limited. If you are on one of those 19 occupations or that skill list, then you have absolutely no problems. You will be organised. You will be you can get a visa very, very quickly, and you can get priority processing. If your industry or occupation is deemed non-critical, then unfortunately there are huge delays and visas are just not being processed in a lot of the work areas at the moment. So that's something just to be aware of, because there is a lot of issues related to that. Now, obviously, the other one that important to a lot of people is the family visas. They have increased significantly the proportion of partner visas available, and they've all increased the number of parent visas. And there are also, I think, 1,000 allocation for children visas. But they have said that next financial year, the focus will be to, there will probably be people who have the 820 applications, or to people who have the 309 visas but are actually in Australia. And then they have said that they will try and reconnect families as something of an important point. So partner visa updates. At the moment, there's a ceiling of about 69,000 people. So they've doubled what that was previously. So that is very, very positive, because if you are separated from your partner, then, you know, for some of you, you have been separated for over a year now. And so that's quite positive that there's a very large amount. This has led to faster processing times, and they've reduced a lot of the backlog. So this is really good. Now, from a positive side, when you lodge an application now, certainly this financial year, they are looking to see if it's decision ready. If it is decision ready, they are rushing it through. They will literally, if you lodge it, it's decision ready. They will, when they go through it, see it's decision ready, and they will grant it instantly. We have had visa grants for partner visas in as little as 10 days, okay? So that's very positive for people that are lodging new applications. But if you'd already lodged an application, then it may be sitting in the pile and they're waiting to go through that. My advice for you is, if you've got a partner visa application that is pending, go and update everything so it is all ready, so that when they do get to it, they can take one look at it and say, everything's updated here, and then they can go through and lodge it straight away. Now, what do I mean about updating it? Things like making sure your police reports are current, that they haven't expired, making sure you've updated recent chat histories and things like that, so that they can see that the relationship is still genuine and ongoing as of today, and then they can go through. They don't have to come back and do a Section 56 request for more information, which then drags out the whole process and everything. So that's something that is just go and update it, and you'll help yourself out a lot more. There is a big shift at the moment moving to onshore. So what I mean by that is any visas that, if people are already in Australia, the focus in the next financial tax year is going to be to grant those visas to people in Australia. They want to limit the movement of people. Although already we have seen that there's a lot of political debate about this, and although there was no money allocated for quarantine in the budget, they are now actually talking about opening up a new quarantine station at Avalon. So there are things that may change that weren't in the budget because of a lot of the backlash that's going on. But it's one of those things that you really need to kind of plan for the worst, hope for the best. One of the things, when they do move to onshore, they will get rid of all the backlog of all the 820s and everything else. I say they're moving to the onshore, but do remember that they are trying to reunite families. So that is something that's important to them. Also, there's never been a best time to do it than right now, because if you do get it done now, as said, we're seeing grants in as quick as 10 days. You then have 1 year to actually fly down, and if the borders are still, if there's still restrictions around the borders, then you will find that they have been lenient on that 12 months. The other thing is, if you get one of the partner visas now, they are exemption free. You don't need a travel exemption to enter Australia, which is obviously a great bonus, because travel exemptions are, and I touched briefly on it with the visitor visas, it's probably easier to win lotto in Australia than it is to get a travel exemption, okay? That is how it's done. At the moment, it is just the criteria. There is no rhyme or reason. It is being dealt with basically by heartless and mindless people. It's unfortunate, but that's where it is, and that all comes from the government's policy of having a closed border. Now, I'm just going to run through quickly we had a number of questions come in before. I'm going to go through the exemptions quickly, just to give you an update of what it's actually like and everything. So, can you leave Australia? The answer is yes. It is permissible, but there are certain limitations on it, and it's quite strict. It's not something that you can easily just decide, I want to go away. And you certainly can't do it short term for a holiday or something. There are a number of automatic exemptions, and these are things like people that are normally resident overseas, to have family overseas, normally live overseas. So there's a number of automatic exemptions that are available. They are pretty obvious. If you've got a visa and you've been living overseas and you got stuck in Australia, then you now can go. So they're quite clear cut. The areas that you can apply outside of the automatic exemptions, there is compelling and compassionate if you are leaving for at least 3 months. So one of the things that you go through at the moment is you can say that, you're going away for something. If it's less than 3 months and it's not compelling and compassionate, you have 0 chance of getting the exemption to go. So it really needs to be something that's, if you've got a sick relative overseas and you're going to care for them, then and you're going to go away for, 6 months or something, then you have no problems. If it's essential work or business, if you've got to go and do something of an essential nature, if it's something that benefits Australia, they will allow you out to go and do that. That does not have a 3-month time limit on it, so you could go to some urgent or essential meetings or training courses or other things. That's available. And then the other one, if you need to get urgent medical attention and that medical attention is only available overseas, then they will allow you to go ahead and do that. Okay, and then travelling to Australia. Now, this is incredibly difficult at the moment. I said there's some automatic exemptions. If you don't fall into the automatic exemptions, it can be very, very hard. So the automatic exemptions are things like if you're an Australian citizen, if you're an Australian permanent resident, if you're a New Zealand citizen normally resident in Australia, you all have automatic exemptions, okay? There is no issues around that whatsoever. So they're the automatic ones. If you fit into that, great. Automatic exemptions also apply for holders of a 309 or a 100 visa, an 820, an 801 visa, or a 101 visa. They are all automatically exempt as well. So that's one of the important things about having some of those visas. If you are immediate family, then there is a automatic, sorry, not automatic, you have to apply for it, but if you can show your immediate family. Now, immediate family means spouse or dependent child, okay? If you don't fit into that, now spouse can be de facto, although it is incredibly hard to prove at the moment and for them to accept de facto. So that's something. If you're married, it's very, very straightforward and easy. If you are de facto but you have not been living together, then it becomes a lot harder. And so sometimes it's worth just actually seeking some clarification on that. You are, as immediate family, exempt or entitled to a travel exemption, but getting it and proving it to them, as said, they seem to be heartless, mindless robots that are making these decisions at border force. The next one is compassionate and compelling grounds. Now, these do have to be really, really serious grounds. People that are about to have a child, I think if you're in your 9th month of pregnancy, then your partner can come, things like that. They are, people dying and everything else. It is something that is really quite serious. It's not just, we've been separated for 1.5 years. Unfortunately, they do not care. And then the urgent medical treatment. that's one there. The, again, urgent medical treatment that you can get in Australia, and critical skill. The critical skill one is, as I said, there's the 19 occupations, but people have been successful. If you show that you're in an industry that is important, then people have been able to achieve that as well. Now, generally, to apply for a travel exemption, you either should have a visa or have a visa application in the system. So that's been a fairly, it's a high-level overview. When you start getting into the detail of it all, it becomes very specific and everything else. So it gets a lot harder to look at each one, for doing a presentation like this, it's very difficult to pinpoint and cover everybody's concerns because everybody's will be slightly different. But hopefully that's a good overview. And now we can do the question and answers, and that will hopefully we can go into a little bit more detail about that. So are you there, Harris?
Yes, I am.
All right, and we'll bring in the lovely Nit as well. If anybody wants to ask any questions in Thai, then we'll do that as well. All right, so I know you've got a lot of questions there, Harris.
Yeah, let me start with the one from the chat first. So Tanya says that I have multiple visitor visas since March 2020 until March 2023. What will be the conditions for entry in Australia? My daughter and grandchildren live in Australia currently.
Okay, so you will need to get a travel exemption. Hi, Tanya. Unfortunately, you will need to get a travel exemption before you're allowed into the country. And that is the challenge. As said, at the moment, they are very, very difficult to secure. If you email in, I don't actually have it here to hand, but there's a temporary entrant visa site and you have to put in an application there. If you show that you have, it depends, probably a little bit more information needed from you. I'm guessing your daughter, if you've got grandchildren, I'm guessing that with that she won't be dependent. So unfortunately, you might find it very, very difficult to do that. But the only way is to apply for a travel exemption and see if you can get through on that.
Great. This one just came in. William says, my wife has a subclass 100 and must enter Australia by 15th December. Are there any exemptions / leniency for late entry?
Okay, so William, hello. When that's issued, that's a condition that is not a terminal condition of the application. So what they've said is they've realised because of costs of flights, availability of flights, and also cost of quarantine and everything, it is actually quite a fundamental undertaking to return to Australia at the moment. If you are not going to do it now, I'm speaking as of the situation now. With all of this, the situation evolves and changes quite rapidly. So, what we say today may be different in the future. But at the moment, if you're not going to make it, if you've made an effort, I recommend that you keep all of the paperwork and everything that you have, like cancelled flights and other bits and pieces, so that anything that you have, you can use later as evidence. If you don't meet it at the moment, they are being lenient, but you will need to go back to the department and get permission because the visa you have and the travel facility on it will expire on the 15th of December. So if she was to try and arrive on the 16th of December, her visa actually wouldn't be valid because of the conditions. So what you need to do is then go back to them and say, we have secured a flight. She will now be travelling on such and such a date, and organise with them to get an extension from that. Now, you can't do it until, at the moment, you can't do it until you actually know the travel date. So it's not an ideal system. It could change. Obviously, if things get easier to get into Australia, that will change. And so you just want to keep up to date of what's happening.
Okay, next one is from Facebook. This is Sue asking, I am an Australian citizen living in Thailand. I would like to travel to Sydney to visit my elderly mother, 96. And she says, I understand I will need quarantine, but can I leave to return to my home in Thailand? I read that they are not allowing Australians out of the country.
Yeah. So, Sue, as an Australian citizen, you have full right to fly back. You don't need any travel exemptions or anything else to fly back. As you stated, you do have to unfortunately do the quarantine. There is talk about the vaccination program eventually that you may be able to do home quarantine, but that's a long way off. So yes, you can fly back. Yes, you'll have to quarantine. Depending on what visa you're on over here in Thailand, will depend on how easy it is for you to get the exemption to leave. If you are on a permanent visa here, I say permanent, obviously most of them are 12 months, but if you can show that you have a visa here that's long-term, and you can show that this is your residence, and things that also help might be like, show that you've got a lease here and other things, that should allow you to leave. However, if you're somebody that's been on a visitor visa here and you've taken advantage of all the extensions and everything else, then it may be very hard to prove that you're actually normally resident overseas. So just be a little bit careful about that. But if you're on a long-term visa, a non-immigrant O visa or B visa or something, then you should have no problems proving to leave the country again.
Okay, great. I have another one from the chat. This is from Jude. I'm an aircraft engineer working in Bangkok. I'm trying to transfer my engineer's license to an Australian engineer's license. I have to sit for a couple of exams to achieve that. Is there any possibility that I could travel to Australia for these exams?
In this day and age, Jude, I would be saying that surely there must be an online opportunity. The question is what visa you'd be looking at to do it and how long you're looking to go for. If you're looking to go short term, I would say it would be incredibly unlikely you would get a travel exemption. You don't say what nationality you are. Obviously, if you're Australian, you can go back and then you'd get, if you're living and working up here, then you'd have no problems being able to leave and come back. If you're not Australian and you just want to sit a couple of exams, then I think you're going to find it very, very difficult. So, yeah, unfortunately, probably very difficult at this point.
Okay, this next one's a bit long, so bear with me, Simon. Several questions. Is it possible, considering the current future of COVID circumstances, to travel from Thailand to Australia? I do not have family. This person has previously lived in Thailand and wants to travel to Thailand, not to Australia. So is this a possibility, even though this person does not have family in Thailand, to meet their partner? And would it be possible for his partner to come to Australia, even if they're not like in a legal relationship, like not married or anything?
All right. Bad news first. If you're not if you can't show grounds for a travel exemption, then she unfortunately has no chance of being able to travel to Australia. It really has become Fortress Australia, and they really have made it very difficult to enter. So if you are not in immediate family and you don't have critical skill or one of the other exemption categories, then unfortunately you've got very little chance or almost no chance. To leave Australia is easier. What I would do in your circumstances is I would visit the Thai embassy and I would secure a visa overseas. I'm guessing that you would meet the age for requirement for retirement visa. So I would speak to the embassy. I would ask if you could get, you want to be reunited with your partner overseas, and that I would, the Thais, how do I say this? The Thais have very strong family values, okay? It's something that they're very, very warm and positive about. So if you explain that you're trying to reunite with a partner, then they're going to be quite positive about that, and they should help you to do that. If you show that you've got a history of living in Thailand as well, that's going to make the case a lot easier. So they're important things that you want to share with them. If you secure the visa from them and then show that you have a long-term visa to go back to Thailand, you will be able to secure the travel exemption to leave Australia, because you would just show that you've got that visa and that you're going long-term. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, my next question is, how difficult is it to get a work visa in Australia these days? Are employers open to sponsoring foreigners this year compared to hiring locals?
Okay, very good question. As I kind of said before, if you listen to the employers in Australia at the moment, they are screaming out saying that they have a shortage of workers. And this is certain industries and everything else. If you're on the critical skill list, as I said, there's 19 of them there. If you're on those, then you will get a very, very quick decision on a visa, and it'll be processed very, very quickly. If you fall outside of that, then it tends to become a lot harder. Australian employers know at the moment that it's very difficult to get somebody in, so it depends on the industry. A lot of them are lobbying to try and get the system changed so that they can sponsor people and bring them in. So I think that all you can really do is watch this space. If you don't fit into the critical skills, then I would be I would keep an active eye on what's happening, because there is going to be a point where suddenly you can get in, and there's going to be a huge demand from employers. There's some good sites, seek.com.au is a very good employment website. Go and have a look at that. That'll give you some good ideas of what's available and what people are looking for. And knowing that there could be quite some time, it may not be the best time to be applying for jobs, but when it does get to the stage where the borders are going to open up, then there's going to be an absolute stampede of employers looking to get people into Australia and people wanting to get into Australia and take advantage of the booming economy at the moment. So hopefully that helps.
Great. This next one's from Dale. So he asks, once I've paid the visa fees and lodged the applications and they get denied, is that it? He says, have I done all my money? So well,
Dale, your first mistake was not coming to us. I've never had a partner visa refused, and I don't want to start yet. In theory, your visas are only going to get refused for some very specific reasons. The most common is character and health, and if you fail those, then there's going to be obviously an underlying issue. Depends on, I should answer, it depends on, I don't know if you can put in there, Dale, what visa you're actually talking about. If it's a visitor visa or something, then there's no right of appeal. If it's things like a partner visa and some work visas, and depending on where the applicant is, there is an appeal process through the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. They tend to be pretty friendly towards the applicant, but my goal or suggestion to you would be avoid putting in something that's going to get to a situation that could be refused. Sorry, just being told my battery's low and it's plugged in, so we'll fix that up quickly. Make sure your application's as strong as it can be. That's the first thing. And just plug it straight into the wall. Just make sure the application is as strong as it possibly can be. And if you've got any weaknesses, I would actually consult a professional, because you don't want to have... you really want to avoid any risk of it happening. So hopefully that answers the question. So it says, I'm working on it. So I can answer you now, Dale, quite easily. The simple answer is yours will not be refused.
Let's move on to the next one then. This is from Sultan. He's an Indian living in Bangkok, working as a mechanical engineer, and he's asking whether he can go to Australia in any capacity.
Okay, hi Sultan. At the moment, I think there's one engineering category on the critical skills list, so you'd have to check with that. If you've got that, then it's very easy. Otherwise, the process for an engineer, you need to do a skill assessment, and then you'll either have to do employee sponsored, or you will need to do a skilled migrant visa. That's something I should mention. There's talk now about these new global talent visas. So if you meet the criteria of those, then you will be able to go in. The focus of the government is now to try and attract high-level candidates for the skilled migration. So engineers in Australia have always been in demand. So if you go through the process, do your skill assessment, you'll need to do an English test, and then depending on whether you can have enough points to do skilled migration or whether you need to be sponsored, but there should be options available there.
Okay. Great, that covers it. That's all the questions for now.
All right, fantastic. Well, I've got a couple more things to just go through. It's obviously fantastic for Bart Smart to have organised all of this, and there's some good news for everybody on there. Bart Smart has been kind enough to give you all a special deal. Harris may have the details a little bit more on that, but there's a code you can put in. So if you go to bartsmart.com, you can use this. And if you go to audsmart.com, and for that, this is for the Filipino currency, PHP. If you put in the code SBSMW, then you'll get a special rate on your transfer. For those of you who don't know what Bart Smart is, this is something I share with all of my clients, because so often I see clients sending money through bank transfers or through Western Union, and they are getting absolutely fleeced on the exchange rate, and they're being charged fees on top of that. Bart Smart is a currency exchange. You deposit the money into your bank, to their bank account in Sydney, and it will be deposited in the local currency in the country where you want it to go to. They are absolutely brilliant, great service, and someone I highly recommend. And even better, they're giving you this code now as well. So that code, SBSMW, that's for bartsmart.com and audsmart.com for Filipino currency as well.
Yeah, one great thing I would like to point out, if you do a transfer even on a holiday or a weekend in Australia, if it's done through Osco, it still happens even on the holiday. That's the best part about bartsmart.com. So hopefully this is useful to some of you out there. And thank you, Simon, for coming here today.
Cool, thank you. All right, I see another question has popped up too. Jude, you'll probably see my website pop up there. So yes, would be more than happy to help you out if you've got any questions. And sorry, the other screen in the background's a long way away. Is it Ruch?
Yeah, there's another one. I'll read it out. My partner is in Thailand. We have registered our relationship. Is there a good chance to get travel exemption? We are waiting for 309, but yet to be granted.
Okay. Unfortunately not. I keep referring to these brainless, mindless, heartless people in Canberra. I think they all must be single and not have any family, because they don't seem to want to give exemptions to anybody. The best piece of advice I can say is try, and if that fails, try and try again. Highlight everything around the relationship. You've got to prove that you are de facto. To me, now I've had this fight with Peter Dutton's office, I've had this fight with Alan Tudge's office, and I've had all of his staff agree with me, but I can't speak to anybody at Border Force. Under the regulations and under their policy, if you are an immediate family member, which includes a de facto relationship, then you are entitled to a travel exemption. Having a registered relationship is the legal equivalent of being married. So I can't see on any level how they can refuse that. Now, unfortunately, they are. And it makes absolutely no sense to me. It is not right. It actually makes me really quite angry that they sit there and do this. All you can do is try putting in everything, show as much as you can about the genuineness of the relationship. You know, anything that you've got apart from on top of the registered relationship, any joint assets, any joint loans, any joint expenses, you know, anything that you can show a pattern, a history around the relationship, that must help. Okay, so put the travel exemption in. The travel exemptions too, I don't know if anyone's ever tried one, you're allowed 15 meg of documentation. So you've got to be very careful with what you put in and how much you put in. But put it in, put in the stuff, put in as much as you can about the history of the relationship. Certainly, obviously, put in the relationship certificate and show as much background and history that you possibly can. The answer is yes, you should be getting it. The reality is no, they're very hard to get. So.
Okay. I guess that covers all the questions then. We should stop taking them now since we're over time already. Almost.
All right. Yeah, and so there's my website's there. If anybody does want anything, we offer a free consultation, and we also, anybody this month, we will offer a 10% discount if they tell us that they came to us from Bart Smart, our good friends across at Bart Smart. So thank you very much, Harris. That's it from me.
Thank you very much, Simon. Nice to have you here. Thanks, Nit.
Thank you very much. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Have a good one.